Okay, so hello, fellow Haskellers. Welcome back to another episode of Giggles is You. In this show, I am re-implementing part of one of my favorite games, Baba is You, and I am re-implementing it in Haskell. And I think that this is a relatively easy project. I work on some much crazier stuff elsewhere, like the Haskell mask project, in which we use a lot of fancy type level stuff in order to guarantee a lot of things about the correctness of our machine learning implementation. But for this project, I think it's fairly easy stuff, and so I am encouraging beginner questions. Just type that in the chat, and that's both if you're unfamiliar with the Giggles as You project, because I won't like recap everything I've done in all of the previous episodes, unless someone asks a specific question. And also if you're a beginner to Haskell in general, even though this is what I would consider to be a project that uses relatively simple Haskell idioms, I'm sure that if you are new to Haskell, that it looks very overwhelming. So please ask questions, and I will just explain whatever the audience members are curious about. So let me begin by showing you what the game looks like so far. So here's the game. We can move around, and as you can see, when I move around, both the red character, called Giggles, moves around, but also all of the green circles with a B inside, and that is because the default set of rules is Giggles is you and B is you, so those are the two kinds of objects which I can move around. But what is cool about Baba is you and therefore Giggles is you is that it's possible to change those rules. So if I write name is you A, which is our internal representation of the rule A is you, then now I can move Giggles A and B. All right, so that's the current state. And for a few sessions already, I've been trying to write some tests. I implemented a test framework that makes it possible to describe the state of the level and then what happens when we move. So for example, when I move to the left here, I cannot move further to the left because the wall is blocking us, well the edge of the level is blocking us, whereas if I make the other character, the ghost, it's called Sheets, if I say name is stop sheets in order to enable the rule sheets is stop, then if I try to move to the left, then A is stopped by sheets, but if I have a whole row of objects that are you and I move to the left, instead of the whole row being blocked, just like it was when I tried to move off the edge of the world, this time the objects are stacking on top of each other. And that's the behavior I want. And so I want to write a test that asks that it should behave like that both when I'm blocked by an object and when I'm blocked by the edge of the world. And then once I'll have a failing test, I want to fix it. So test first. I don't always do test-driven development, but this time that's how I want to deal with this particular bug. So let's get started. So I have a test suite that I'm not using any testing library. I just wrote a very simple wrapper, run test here, that just runs the test and calls exit failure if the test failed. Because that is how testing frameworks such as Tasty and HSpec are reporting back to the stack test command that the test suite has failed. We don't need a test suite, it just helps with like structuring our tests. I might switch to one of the testing libraries later on, but I don't need that yet. Because so far I just have one test, and the test, I believe, is passing. Okay, finally, the test suite has passed. Well, it's a very simple test. I'm just initializing a level. The thing we added last time is this dot, which makes it so that this doesn't describe a 3 by 2 level, but rather a 3 by 1 level, where the x, instead of being like one row above the lowercase g, it's stacked on top of the lowercase g. So that will make it possible to express that I want, after walking into a wall, for all of the objects to be like stacked on top of each other. So let's just define the situation that I want to test. So I had another example here about the before and after. So if I have a stack like this, where W, X, Y, and Z are all U, then I want the result, after moving to the right, to look like this. Oh, but without all of the spaces. Okay, so I want, I think there should be a space here, and I guess here. Okay, so the Z is moving to the right, the Y is moving to the right, out of the S, even though S is stop, and then X is moving, is trying to move on top of the S, but it can't because S is stop, so the X remains in this spot, it's not moving on top of the S. Whereas the W, it's also trying to move to the right, but since X is not stop, even though X is U, the W is able to move to the right, and that's why it's on top of the X. So that's what I want, but now obviously if I run this, the test won't pass. Okay, so it failed with this error message that I expected this world, but I got the same world, the same level description as there was at the beginning, because I didn't ask it to move to the right. So I think I can make my experience, my edit test cycle a bit faster by using GHCID, telling it to load whatever this file is. Let's ask stack, what are the possibilities? I want the test, so this one. I want the test component, so GHCID command equals stack REPL of that component. So now, after it loads, I should now be getting pretty much instant feedback when I edit the file. I have a redundant import on line 6. Do I use that anywhere? Nope. Okay. But I would like to also have instant feedback on whether the test is still passing or not. And so I can do -- test equals passing test. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I wrote my own mini testing framework. It's so that each test can be represented as an IO action rather than some abstract text object that needs to be embedded into a test suite in order to run. This way I can just run it directly from GCD, which is my preferred way of running tests while I develop. Okay, so I want to do another thing, another action here before the check. I want to move towards the right. But I did not yet implement any function that would allow me to move towards the right. So I just have run test and check. I need to add move, I guess, and then a direction, and that should be my test action. And my test action is defined as this monad stack. So I can fail with a list of lines like these, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. Or I can modify the state of the world. So let's modify the state of the world. Modify. And now with which function do I want to modify the state of the world? I need to provide a function of type. Oh, I can't yet provide a function because I haven't imported dir. I task tags. Let's index everything and see where I've defined dir. It's in the dir module. Very aptly named, if you ask me. All right. And now well, this type signature type checks, but this block does not, because there is no instance for monad state arising from blah, blah, blah. Right. So I think I will take this opportunity to rant a bit on API design. This is a new type around a monad stack that contains both acceptee and state effects, right? And very commonly, when people define such monad stacks, I see them either defining them as like a type synonym over that monad stack, or as like a new type wrapper around a monad stack, but one in which they then go ahead and derive instance for things like, in this case, monad accept and monad state, so that within a do block of type myTest, they can both fail using the monad accept instance for acceptee, or mutate the state using the monad state instance for the state monad. And I think that's a mistake. I think that the reason I have defined this new independent monad myTest as opposed to just directly using acceptee state is because there's a conceptual difference, right? This is specifically for writing tests. It's not for writing generic computations that can fail and mutate a piece of state of type world. And so I want to design an API in which the users of my API, in this case it's myself, but I like imposing constraints upon myself, are guided in the right direction. I want to limit the choices of my users in order to point them in the right direction. And in this case, I want to provide them with a very small API of test-related stuff. So check is a test-related action. Move is a test-related action. Directly mutating the internal state is not. It is rather an implementation detail of how I can implement the move action that is relevant for the test. So that's why here I don't want to run modify inside of the do block of type myTest. And so the error that I got, no instance for monad state myTest, I don't want to fix it by adding a monad state instance here, but rather by opening up the myTest new type and to define here inside of the constructor a computation of type acceptee state. And so inside of this block, I do have access to actions such as failing with a list of lines or mutating the state, but outside, I don't want the users of the myTest monad to have to worry about those implementation details. I just want them to have access to high-level actions such as move and check. All right, so now finally I get to what I was about to say when I wrote this underscore. So I need to modify the state. I just need to provide a function of type world our world. That's what the error message is telling me. I seem to remember that I already wrote a function which does that. So in, where would it be? World? I have a run command function that takes a string, interprets it, and that's fine. And I guess, is it Z? Is it level? I remember there's another function that I wrote from world to world that takes in a direction. I guess we'll have to go and find where it is. Is it in there? No. It's probably not in types. Is it in rules? Yes. We have here a function. It's not from world to world after all. It's from level to level. So we'll modify whatever's inside world. Let's see. So world contains, right, it contains the level and the rules. So I would call move you in not world, but in my test suite. When I want to move, I receive a world W, and I want to have access to its fields, and I mutate it so that I return a new world. Let's write it like that, where I have modified its level field because I have applied the move you function with the set of rules. So the rules from the world. Is there an easier way to do that? Oh great, I forgot where move you was defined. It's in the rules function. What calls move you? Maybe there's already a helper function from world to world. No, doesn't seem like there is. It's fine. So move you takes the set of rules that are currently enabled for the world and the direction and the current state of the level, and it produces a new level. Alright, and I need to enable the record language record wildcards extension in order to use the curly ... feature. I said at the beginning that I am using relatively straightforward Haskell, like in particular I'm not using a lens in this particular function, even though I think it would make it simpler, because lenses are just a much more complicated Haskell feature. But I don't think that we should be afraid of using language extensions. I think that those language extensions just reflect the evolution of the language over time. In a language like Java, they would just say, Java 13, or I don't know which version they're at, has this new feature. Whereas in GHC, instead of saying that the new version of the compiler and therefore the language has this new feature, since Haskell is a language that was initially developed in order to join the forces of various researchers that were working on non-strict programming languages, they standardized their various languages, so that there were many implementations of Haskell. Today, GHC is like the main one which remains, but they've still retained this idea that there is a language spec, and if you're going to stray away from the language spec, you need to do something to indicate it, and that's what these language pragmas say. They just indicate, here are all of the new features that have been implemented by GHC over the years that I want to use, but which are not part of that spec because it hasn't been updated in years, because, well, it's a standard document. It's not something that the GHC team itself controls. It's something that we'd need to gather a lot more stakeholders. It's much harder to change. Anyway, so I have implemented move, so I should now be able to call it here if I want to move to the right. I think there I defined it in terms of north, east, west, south, and not up, down, left, right. So move towards the east. And I need to import move u, and we said it was defined where? Move u in rules. So import rules. Alright, still not quite done. What do I need to do? Couldn't match type world set rule. Right. So rules is both a function that I can apply on the world in order to get back the rules, because the world data type has two fields, and I can access those two fields using a function from world to level, and so level is a function from world to level, and rules is a function from world to set of rules. But with this ... syntax, I am shadowing those functions and bringing into scope two new values, also called level and rules, so that I can use them as just level directly and rules directly. That's my problem here. I had used it as the function instead of as the value. Just to make the code a bit simpler, because within this scope, I'm always referring to this particular W as the world. All right. Next error, no instance of monad my test. Okay, so I just ranted about how we should not be deriving monad state and monad except. I think it's called except. From the monad stack. What is it called? Monad except. The one from MTL. What are your instances? Reader state writer. Monad error. It's called monad error, not monad except. Okay. Yeah, I said that I did not want to derive those particular monads. Yes, monad error, thank you. Those particular instances, because that was not the way in which I want my users to use this particular API. But I do want my users to be allowed to chain together a bunch of my test actions inside of a do block. And so I do want a monad instance, and it is okay to derive the monad instance. And in order to derive it, I need another extension. Generalized new type deriving. New type deriving, which makes it so that I can derive any class that the implementation implements for the wrapper type. And since monad has functor and applicative as superclasses, I need to derive them as well. Define or derive, my choice. All right, so I move towards the right, and now I'm no longer receiving, am I receiving the same thing as before? I am receiving the same thing as before. I expected the test to still fail, but I expected it to fail in a different way. Oh, I know why. It is because currently nobody is you. So we cannot, when I move to the right, like all of the things that are you move one cell towards the right, but since nobody is you, nobody moves. I want W, X, Y, and Z to be you. So I could say something like enable rule name is you W. Oh, instead of repeating it, I can make a loop for W, X, Y, and Z. Each of those names. Enable that rule, and now, just as I just added check, I need to add an enable rule, and I think that I already have something like that. Is it in rules? Is it in world? We have this run command, which takes a string. But the thing I don't like about this string is that it well, I'm planning to change that particular format. Like currently it's name is you and then the string Giggles, but like I always type it wrong. I want to type Giggles is you, so I do plan to change it so that this is the format that is accepted, because eventually we'll be able to construct some commands out of blocks. That's the whole point of the game. And I would like to use the same syntax in the debug commands. So that's why I don't want to call run command, even though it has the right type. It goes from world to world. Instead, I would think I want to add here the enable rule, takes a rule and modifies the world, and I guess disable rule, same thing. So whenever I write two functions like that, I wonder, should I write a single function that takes a boolean? And I'm thinking about it a bit further. No, I don't think I do. But who knows? Maybe I'll revert that decision later on. Oh, I inverted them, didn't I? So enable is insert, disable is delete. And here I want to call disable rule with the new rule and get a new world. And here enable rule. And here just bring rule and the world into scope and return the same thing as before, but without the maybe. Because there may be, well, this particular function cannot fail. It's rather that run command can fail if it's not a command that it recognizes. All right, so I think I need to run this again in order for it to see that new function that I've defined. It could be that I need to do more than that, such as importing it. No, I'm already importing world. It could be that I have to rebuild the library. Yeah, I think I do. So stack build. I think this will build the library and executables, but not the tests. Nope, it failed doing something. So if there's a type error, I'd rather debug it with GHCID rather than typing stack build over and over. So instead of Giggles as you test, let's run Giggles as you lib. And I don't need to run a command every time I save. I just want to know whether it passed. So let's jump to enable rule. See what's wrong. Could not match expected type set rule. Well, first of all, which line? 19. Okay, so in the implementation, 1933 here. Because rules is one of the fields of W, which here was in scope thanks to the record wildcard curly dot dot syntax. But here was not, because I didn't use the syntax, so it should now be visible. Excellent. And maybe I don't need that anymore. I don't. Still that checks. Okay. And I see that I have some warnings that I left myself for the future. But that is not what I want to focus on right now. Instead, I want to go back to the tests. And see whether that helped. Oh, what happened? Cannot satisfy package Giggles is you. Right, so that's because, okay, so before, when I was just running the tests, but it was saying that it was not seeing enable rule, even though I imported it from world. The problem was that I did previously build the library, But that version that I had built did not include that function, because I added it after I typed stack build. And now I did add enable rule and made it compile, but the way in which I compiled it was with GHCID, and GHCID, since it does this fast feedback, it doesn't like bother to do the extra work that would be necessary in order to write the results to disk. And so that's why, even though I know that things are compiling, I did not actually compile. But I guess GHCID must be doing enough, or maybe it's when I previously typed to try stack build, like it broke the version of the library that I had previously built. So this time, instead of successfully loading a library, a version of the library that it does not include enable rules, it fails to load the library. So that's why I now need to type stack build again in order to build the library. And now I can go back to GHCID, and this time it should be able to successfully load the library. All right, so it loaded the library successfully, but there is type error in the tests. So 57, that's the line I'm currently on. I want to enable the rule. Right, it's not working because enable rule is a function that I just added, which has this type, rule world, but I am in the my test monad, so I need an action of type my test. So I'm a bit like I know that I want to define a function of type rule my test unit. That would be doing the same thing I just did for move. I guess modify enable rule with rule. I'm just not sure what to call it, because enable rule would be a pretty good name. I guess enable. It's a very generic name, but since it's only in scope within this file, and I guess move is also a pretty generic name, and check as well. I guess that's the names I'm picking for this API, just very generic names. Enable name is you, and I guess I will need disable as well. Disable rule. No instance for when that's same error as before. I need to go inside of the constructor in order to have access to those. Excellent. So now I have the error that I expected. So what I expected was to have some of the things moved to the right. So I expected to have a gap between the dot and the first characters, and there is a gap, but the result was not quite what I expected on the right. And that's because I think everything moved towards the right. No, not S. S did not move. So Z moved towards the right, Y moved toward the right, W moved toward the right, which is all things that I do want and expect, but also X moved towards the right on top of S, because I did not say S is stop. So enable name is stop. S. And this did not work. This time I did expect things to work, so why not? So it looks like name is stop is like not working at all. Why not? It's working in the game. Like, let's test a much simpler case, right? If I just have S and Y, and I move towards the left, Y is able to move on top of S. Why can't it? It should be stop. With only one row. Maybe it's the fact that things are stacked. Should not move. It did move. Why is it ignoring name is stop? Okay, well, I don't know why it's working inside of the game, but not here. But we can debug this. Let's go to the debugger. Are you trying to move left? Yes. W is for west. Shouldn't that be lowercase a? No, because I'm taking a direction and not a key. Assuming you mean A as in WASD. Let me just try lowercase. Yeah, lowercase did not help. Okay, so let's use the REPL. So statues, yeah. Okay, so I want to create a world. So parse level dot space space sy space space just equals couldn't match char. It's a list of strings, and as usual we are very cramped in here. And okay, I have a level, and then I want to enable a rule. So I don't even have a world, so I'll create a world. In which order does it take its arguments? Doesn't matter if I use named arguments. So if the set of rules is that name is UY and name is stop. I don't need the other letters. S. And the level is LDL. Oh, it was a set of a list. Set dot from list. I bet set in scope. It is. Okay, cool. So I have a world, and I want to move. So what happens when I call move? I call move you on the set of rules. Move you on the set of rules of that world. The direction is I want to move west, and the level is LDL. There's no instance of show, but I have a pretty print level. So yeah, the result is indeed that Y moves on top of S. But now we have like very concrete values that we can play around in the REPL. So let's go to the definition of move you and see what's going on. So let's see how each of the sub pieces are working, I guess. So I can define each of those things, level chunks. I guess I need to have all of the same variables in scope as well. So LVL is already in scope, here is west, and the rules is rules of the world. I can't write that, can I? R equals rules of the world, and rules equals R. Shadowing to the rescue. Okay, so now if I write this, variable not in scope, row chunks, this is row chunks. Okay, this time I won't make the same mistake as in the last stream. I will dedent before copying. A bunch of things are not in scope. Has use, okay, I will also copy those too. Okay, excellent. Now I can do row chunks. Oh, inside of currently, excellent. And I guess move chunk as well while I'm at it. Dedent. It's fine, just warnings. And level chunks. Okay, so now everything is in scope. I should be able to test. Why, okay, so why is move you? Oh, I can't press up that many times. Why is move you of rules, dear level, not giving me the level I expect? It's giving a single row where y is stacked on top of the s. I guess and put strln would make it even nicer. Okay, so why do I get that? Well, it is defined as compose blah blah blah. So it's because compose of move chunk blah 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 is not giving the expected result, and that could be because level chunk is not what I expect, or because move chunk is not what I expect. So what is level chunks? Okay, it's very simple. Level chunks is just a nested list of a single position. Isn't that weird? What's level chunks? I forget. I should add more comments. Level chunks is what I get when I call row chunks on all of the rows. So the directed level indices is in a particular direction. Like I iterate over each row. So directed level indices west of level. There's only one row, so I get a list of length 1. And that first and only entry is a list of all of the positions. My level has 6 cells, so all the positions from the right to the left, because I said W. If I used E, it would be the same positions, but from the left to the right. Okay, and for each of those, I compute the row chunks. So those are, okay, I'll write it down. The chunks which are moving, and here it's all the chunks which are moving throughout the level. And this is the chunks which are moving within this row, within the row. Okay. In particular, this row, represented as the output of direct level indices. Okay. So, so why is level chunks only a single thing, it's because there's only one thing which moves. It's the y that is moving on top of the s. Okay. Look at rules. It does include name and stop. Okay. Then look at has stops. That's a function, so it's trying to move on top of what? Let me just map it over all of those positions. From left to right. I think it would be easier for me to read. The head of that. So there's only one row. All right, so nothing is, well, that's the problem. So let's figure out how that's possible. So has stops asks if any of the positions mentioned, no, at a particular position, so not exactly sure where the S is. If I quickly print the level, so that's 0, 1, 2. So I would expect has stops of 2, 0 to be true, but it's not. So we can investigate why. So any is stop rules of the sprites. Oh, P is not in scope. What is P? Oh, P is the position I care about. So 2, 0. Okay. So so this returns false, but I think it should return true. So since it's pure code, we can easily decompose. The problem is either with isDop or with sprites at. So I expect that the sprites that are at that position is just S. Ah, that's the problem. I special cased in the parsing code 2 letters, S for sheets and G for giggles. But did I change anything? I think it just indented. Okay, so in my test here, I was thinking of S as stops, not S as giggles. And since I didn't have any special processing for stop, he expected it to be called S. Okay, okay. So remember the warning I was ignoring earlier? And I said I would do that later. That was a warning specifically in order to catch this kind of error. So I left a note for myself that I ignored for too long. So I guess it might be time to address this warning. But first, let's just fix. So yeah, if I fix the rules, yeah, I don't even need to run it inside of GHCI. I'm confident enough that I've tested it now. If I run the test again, GHCID, yeah, I think it will pass now. Oh, I don't think it says anything upon success. Passing test followed by put strln, yes, single quote. So I can use double quotes inside. Passed. All caps. There. Now I won't think that it's hanging. Passed. Great. Okay. Now I can run the test I actually care about because I was not too concerned that this one will not pass. And the instant feedback, oh, sheets. There we go, passed finally. Okay, and I did all that because okay, so this one I do expect to pass, but as I was saying, if there's a wall, scaling test, if there's an object that is blocking the other objects that are you, then they get stuck. But if they are trying to move against the wall, so if I had just this, I think, then I would expect Y to move on top of Z, so Z would still be here, but the Y would be on top. But that's not what I get. Instead, the W successfully moved towards the right on top of the X, but the Y remains on top of the S. And again, that's because the way in which I'm handling collision with the walls is different with the way in which I'm handling collisions elsewhere. Maybe I have time to fix that actually. So in rules, I think, is the place where move view is implemented. So yeah, I'm checking has stop in order to figure out whether the chunk of objects that are moving to the right should end. But if I am defining such a chunk that touches the edge of the screen, I am returning it, even though like the rightmost element should not be moving towards the right. And then I am saying that later on there's a later filter for like if I ask to move a sprite outside of the bounds of the world, I'd say no, and I do nothing. Instead of failing loudly. So perhaps I should be failing loudly as well, but that would not be enough to fix the bug, only to make it fail in a different way, like with an exception instead of by doing nothing. But I also need to modify this row chunk so that it does not include the element that is next to the world, the edge of the world. And that's a bit tricky because I'm like the way in which I split those chunks is if I'm encountering an object that is stop, then I'm splitting the chunk I've accumulated so far. But I'm only enumerating over the positions that are inside of the level. I would need to enumerate like one more on the edge of the level and then find that the edge of the level is stop or something. Which I guess I could do. Let's see. So if I were to include positions inside of this has instead of here, so the level directed level indices, these go from, in this case, the right. Am I moving right or left? I'm moving right this time, right? Yeah, I'm moving right. So those are the positions from left to right within the level, and I'll wide is the level 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'd need the position 4, 0 at the end. So if I was to do that, just hard coding it, just to see what would happen, because I suspect that we would like try to index into the level at that position and everything would crash. Oh, I know, I keep, like since there's only one row, I keep thinking of directed level indices as if it was returning a single row, but it's returning a list of rows. So here it thinks I'm trying to add a new row, but I want to add this entry to the only row there is. So I guess map of adding this one entry to all the rows, but there's only one row. Okay, So now stack test. So I expect that this will crash because I will index into the level somewhere. Maybe I can figure out where actually. So I'm calling row chunks. Row chunks is receiving a bunch of positions. And what am I doing with them? I'm asking if they are use or if they are stop. And that's it. Here I am not myself doing any indexing. So if I make has you and has stop smart by, for example, asking if the position is inside of the level, then I could say that any position that is outside of the level is not you and it is stop. And I think that will help. Test suite passed. Oh, so it worked actually. Okay. Why is that? Like sprites. What does sprites at return? Shouldn't it be crashing? What? Okay, I'm very confused now. Why did it not crash? Oh, I know why. Check this out. This is going to crash. And that is because in my test suite, I just added a new top level function called failing test, but I'm not running it anywhere. My main function was only calling passing tests. So if I'm calling failing test as well, then stack test will fail as well. Okay, that was not a waste of time. Failing test, yeah, is crashing, but as I was saying, we could fix it by making has use and has stop hack it so that when I ask about a position that is outside of the world, I always say that it is not you and it is stop. So do I have a function to check whether a position is inside of a level? Inbounds, there you go. So, it is you if it is in bounds and that thing, and it is stop if it is out of bounds. Is bounds, or if that thing is true. Okay. Passed. All right. So the idea is sound, but of course, like this ++4, like that was a temporary hack. Let's see. Do I use directed level indices anywhere else? Because maybe I could modify directed level indices directly. Nope. I'm only using it on this one line in rules. The rest of the occurrences are the tests. So yeah, we could just say that we do want to return one more cell always. If it's a function that was created directly for that purpose, I guess I'm not breaking anything by making it produce this slightly unintuitive result. Includes one more position outside the bounds of the level for each row. And clearly it's defined in terms of level calls. and level row, so both of those are returning one position, yes, one extra position outside of the bounds of the level. One extra position, and same thing for level rows, and they're all defined in terms of level rows, so I just have to say max +1. Excellent, the tests are passing, and if I run the game, I should now be able to walk into the edges of the world. Nope, it did not work. I'm confused. The tests are passing. Why am I not able to walk into the edges of the world? Because the test, yeah, the test should be working. I don't know. Well, this is now a passing test. I don't know, walk onto obstacle mid-level, could be a good name, and walk onto obstacle at world's end. And now if I'm trying to reproduce what just happened when I ran the level, so failing test. Let's see, I had 3 things that were U, just X, Y, and Z. I guess I can just make them all the same. Just Giggles is U, that's the name of the game. I'm trying to move right, and yeah, they are stacking on top of each other as I expect inside of this test. Oh, but only when they are moving towards the right. Alright, the failing test is if I'm west. Then I would expect them to stack here. But they don't. Because I just did +1, and that is not direction independent. It goes in a particular direction. It assumes that I'm going towards the right. Okay, so this test is not as easy as I thought. But I think I've already spent way enough time on this, so I will try to fix that in the next episode, and hopefully also get to the warning that led me to lose so much time today, so that I don't lose even more time in the future. So, thank you very much. See you next time!